What's up, everybody? This is Caneta, and today we're talking about Lucas Paquetá of West Ham, the FA charges against him, his next moves, and whether the FA was right or not. But before, here's the intro. It is August 11th, and we are going to talk about Lucas Paquetá and the betting charges situation. Before we go into it, make sure to like and subscribe this video. Help me grow this channel, please. So on August of 2023, the English FA charged Lucas Paquetá of West Ham United for spot fixing. He was accused of purposely receiving yellow cards to benefit bettors. In total, he received 4 yellow cards between the 2022-23 season and the 23-24 seasons. From his side, he denied all the accusations. There was a full investigation launched then, and if guilty, he would have been very possibly banned for life from the sport, right? Not like he could change to a different league and continue playing. He would just not be allowed to play football at all as a professional again. And the severity of this punishment is owed because it could throw the credibility of the sport in jeopardy. We're not talking about, a minor league per se, say, I don't know, the Indonesian league, for example, right? If the same situation were to occur in the Indonesian league, that league would lose its credibility, its sponsors, but there's a way for them to bounce back. They don't have as much visibility. It's not a major league. When it comes to the Premier League, it's a different story. This is the top league in the world right now. It is the most broadcast league in the world. It generates the most, it moves the most money. And so lots of sponsors. And if it loses credibility, then that means billions of dollars at play here. It's not like, in the past when the Italian league was the top league in the world, and we did have issues that were actually confirmed to have been happening, and they lost some credibility. But it was a different time in that it was before social media, and there wasn't this brand association and brand reputation that we see today. So there's a concern with brand association these days. It's a lot more scrutinized. So if there is a problem with a specific brand, sponsors are very quick to drop or to disconnect from said brand, right? Sponsors don't want to deal with it. So we're talking about the most viewed league in the world with the biggest sponsors and the most money generated. That would have been a terrible, terrible loss, not only for the Premier League, but the actual game itself. It would have been complete chaos, right? So that's how seriously the investigation has to be. It has to be absolutely thorough and meticulous. So after 2 years, here we are, August of 2025. They found no conclusive evidence. And so Lucas Paquetá was cleared, right? Not guilty. What happens next? Does he stay at West Ham? Does he move on? What do we look at? Well, in these 2 years, while this investigation was happening, there was a clear dip in performance for him, right? So he was not the same player at all that he used to be before this happened. With that, he lost his spot on the Brazilian national team. And for Brazilian players, that is the pinnacle of your career, right? Is to represent the country in the World Cup, maybe win it. And this is 2025. We've got a World Cup next year. Had this been a different generation, I can guarantee he wouldn't have made it. But at least he does have the chance to bounce back and make the team before the World Cup, right? But doesn't mean that it was great. He also missed out on a move to Manchester City that seemed to be all but signed before these accusations came out. And 2 years in a row, there were talks. And for 2 years in a row, the roadblock for the move was the fact that he could have been found guilty. And so they chose not to pull the trigger on signing him. So that means he missed out on significant financial and career advancements, right? Not he could have won, prizes as well, right, for performances had those dips not happened. So there's a clear case for damages here, not to mention the psychological impact. So it's my understanding that he does have legal recourse against the FA for these damages. And in fact, his lawyers actually spoke about probably taking action, and I wouldn't blame him for doing so. He's within his right, I believe, to do so. And then there is the side of the FA, right? I mean, there's no doubt that they have to take these types of situations with the utmost concern and seriousness, but they also have to do better than that. You shouldn't expose the player, especially for this long, and then for the outcome to be not guilty, right? So it's as if, I'm not arguing whether he did it and they just couldn't prove it. That's a different situation. The fact of the matter is that he's not guilty. So you have to treat him as if he didn't do anything, right? Because technically he didn't. You can't prove that he did, so he didn't do anything. And so that's a 2-year span here where it affected the guy, right? There's got to be a better way. I know that the UFC, for example, when they run these drug tests to make sure that the sport's clean, right? So they don't want their athletes or their fighters taking performance enhancing drugs. And so they run these tests. And if they happen to find an illegal substance as a result of a test they conducted, they don't just come out and publicly announce that. They deal with the player first. They let them know. The player can then request a second test to be done so that they can, fully prove that the illegal substance was really found in their system. It wasn't an anomaly or something like that. And meanwhile, no one knows about it, but the parties involved, really. And so until that is proven, that information remains private. So that minimizes the fighter or the athlete's exposure, and they can kind of move on, and if it happens that nothing was found, then they didn't get thrown into questioning. They don't suffer the psychological abuse, and so they can move on with their lives. So there's got to be a way for them to do something like this. But yeah, what happens to Lucas Paquetá now? Does he stay at West Ham, where I'm sure that he would want, I'm sure he's grateful to the club and perhaps wants to repay them somehow. Manchester City, maybe, right? Do they pull the trigger now that he's not guilty? Does he want to go there? That's the question, right? I know from a source that's close to the player that he wants to go back home. And that means these guys right here, Flamengo, right? That's his wish, but he's currently valued at, 60 to 70 million euros? There's no way they have money for that. So there has to be some type of agreement they reach with West Ham, maybe a loan option or something like that. It's a hard deal to get done, but it's his desire. But I can see City coming in and maybe enticing him with their own lawyers, right? The 115 charges. They can sick their guys on the English FA and get him paid even more than he would with just a straight transfer to them. So that's also a possibility here. So yeah, those those are the options, right? What do you think happens next? Do you think he stays at West Ham? Do you think he goes to City? Do you think he goes back home? And what do you think of the FA and their handling of the situation? I think there's got to be a better way. But let me know in the comments and make sure to like and subscribe the video. And until next time, I'll see you.